Okay, so I recently got this Ford Expedition and it's missing the center caps on all four wheels. I frequently get them like this, so clearly there's a design flaw in their ability to stay mounted. So I found these at TNH Auto Wrecking in Vegas, and the problem is they don't pop on and stay on. The plastic tabs are deteriorated and missing, and even taking the tabs off, for some reason, it just won't stay on. But I came up with a solution. I had these brackets laying around from a Mercury Grand Marquis, and the problem is that these bolt holes are not the same exact distance as they are on an Expedition. The bolts are further apart on the Expedition. So my solution is I cut a notch here. Okay, so as you can see, I've now cut the notches. So the idea is that the lug, which normally would be here centered in the hole, is going to be about here. Now when you mount it, you're going to want to take some care to make these as close to being equal and equidistant as possible, because you want this to be as centered as possible. Because once you tighten the lug nut down, it's gonna bend in, and that's gonna kind of be permanent at that point. So I had them finger tightened, but firmly, because what you're gonna realize is that as you tighten one, it starts to pull the metal in, and then it'll go out of center. So you want to tighten it a little, tighten it a little, tighten it a little, until it starts to flex in. And then you can tighten them down all the way, just to keep them centered. Also, I decided that the existing metal retention clip was becoming more of a hindrance than anything else. So as you can see on this other one, I just popped them off. They just pop off with a screwdriver. You get a screwdriver in here and kind of twist it and pop, pop, pop around. Okay, so as you can see, this has been removed. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill here. Now I'm a big fan of drilling small pilot holes when you're going to drill a big hole, especially when you're trying to get something centered. Okay, so now we've got our pilot hole, and it's pretty darn close to centered. And that's going to make this easier. Now this is a 15/32 drill bit. Two smaller than the 1/2 inch. Now the bolts are 10 millimeters, which is closer to 3/8, but you want a slightly bigger hole because you're not going to get it perfectly centered. So you do need a small margin of error, and the bolt heads are proportionally large enough to compensate and cover the hole, no matter how off center it is along the axis of the bolt in its final placement. And there we have it. Now as you can see, it's not absolutely perfectly centered, but because it's large enough, it should be just fine. Now, as I mentioned, these are 1 millimeter bolts. These come in a 1.5 millimeter pitch. That is the coarsest one. 10 millimeter bolts come in not 1, not 2, but 3 different pitches, which I personally think is ridiculous and just creates more problems in trying to match bolts. But these are 1.5 millimeter pitch and 40 millimeter length, which seems to be just perfect. And as you can see, it went right in very easily. I've hand tightened it just to get it to seat in place. And now just a little bit of this. But you don't want to go too hard or you will crack that plastic. And we're done.